Yo, how's it going everybody? It's DJ Sketch and welcome back to the channel, and today we're looking at Gekido, Urban Fighters, an interesting 3D beat 'em up for the PlayStation 1, developed by Infogrames Naps team and published by Interplay in April of 2000. Off the rip, this game reminds me of Dynamite Cop and Fighting Force, which is tight. Though looking back at Fighting Force, I never remember being exactly over the moon with it, which is why I kind of skipped over a lot of beat-em-ups until about the PS2 era. But Gekido is gas though, and this is a solid beat-em-up that's fun to run through just to see what happens next, because this game is wild, dude. The amount of explosions in this game rivals some Michael Bay films, since almost everything can explode. So be prepared for a light show in most areas, and also a lot of stage hazards. So the story goes a bit like this. In New Tokyo, Angela mysteriously vanishes, and the Kintaro crime syndicate has made a deal with the devil, with her as collateral. Angela's family has acquired the help of Detective Travis, who knows he can't go it alone, so he calls upon his friends Tetsuo, Michelle, and Ushi to take back the streets from the syndicate and save Angela. It sounds pretty easy, right? Through 8 stages of branching paths as one of the 4 characters, you'll fight your way to the final encounter. Like I mentioned earlier, at first it seems like it was going to be a lot like Fighting Force, which I remember playing a bit slow. Though Gekido moves significantly faster gameplay-wise than Fighting Force does, which is also super tight. It's just so over the top with the action, it's honestly great, dude. And in practice, it's fairly simple. X is used to kick, square and circle are light and heavy punch. Circle activates your rage meter with 3 levels of intensity, each boosting speed, damage, and defense. The animations for these bits are also priceless. The game also has a surprisingly deep combo system that actually has some familiar fighting game mechanics that you build up along playthroughs as well. It took about 4 runs, but I recently discovered that you can actually juggle characters too in certain situations and go for almost infinite combos. And while in rage mode, after the takedown, you can actually, the more hits you get, you can also kind of make a mini game out of it to get bonus points and sometimes scrub up an extra life. And also the splash screen during the rage takedowns is fucking hype. Sound wise, Gekido has some standard fighting game fare. Impact sounds are pretty good, and as far as the music, there's some tracks by Apartment 26 and a couple remixes of Fatboy Slim's Rockefeller Skank. The drum and bass remix of it's pretty tight, an interesting choice to be heard in a brawler, but you know, it makes sense. I can dig it. Voice samples and such are a bit of a mixed bag though. Character sounds are all pretty similar and have like a couple samples each, and some sound better than others. But the opening cinematic has Ushi saying something that sounds like, "I'm gonna fuck you up." Then I'm pretty sure I'm just hearing that, but either way, it's awesome. Overall, it's decent except for a couple repeated sound effects from the characters, but it's a brawler, so that's kind of standard stuff, so I can't really hold that against it. Graphics-wise, everything looks pretty good too. Everything runs smooth, and aside from some load screens from between sections and levels, load times are actually surprisingly short. And there's some interesting lighting effects, and did I mention the amount of explosions? Character models are also pretty decent too for a 3D fighter from 2000. There's a little bit of jank on the faces and some of the weapons when you look at them, but it's a little bit wonky, but hey man, it works. Now let's get into the quirks of Gekido real quick for even measure. Control wise, there's some interesting choices made here, like using the jump and crouch button and mapping it to L1 and L2, which took some getting used to. And using L2 to pick up items and weapons took a lot of getting used to, also being mapped to crouch. Once you get it though, after a while you used to not really notice it as much. And also I mentioned before with the branching paths depending on which character is used and which optional doors are chosen in some levels. There's a path in particular, when I ran Travis and Michelle, that it has you going down a path with rushing water coming up behind you. And when I had the Michelle playthrough, the run ended here, because I drowned pretty much every time and scrubbed all my continues. But when I ran it with Travis, however, I just kind of pushed past enemies and let the water do the job for me, which sometimes it worked, but sometimes it didn't. But also I noticed too, if you just like spam triangle, just use the heavy punch, like it usually at least will knock them down, so you can just scoot past them and then let the water do the rest. But there was also a part that's on top of the train, the fight with Kintaro. This is actually a pretty interesting case here, because time is usually running kind of tight in this section for some reason, not exactly sure why. But Kintaro has an attack where he'll split into 3 Shadow Warriors, and you have to fight each one before he can take damage again. But also once Kintaro breaks that frame, he also has like invincibility too, so he has a lot of iframes going into that animation, and then even more iframes coming out. So this battle, for whatever reason, ran tight no matter what. Like it really didn't matter who I played it as, like it usually came down to the last few seconds, or just time would run out, which in that case would cost you a life, which, you know, it's a weird choice, but at the same time it is what it is. There's also a credit cap as well. You get 2 lives to start and 3 continues, and that's it. You can get an extend bonus for lives after you hit a certain score, but as far as what I played through, I didn't see any way to get more continues, and there are some difficulty spikes in the game too. And I almost forgot to mention the gorilla fight in stage 3. Yeah, you can fight a gorilla in this game, and it's about as hilarious as you can think. It's like it jumps on top of the boat canopy and just starts raining down like endless streams of barrels at you on some Donkey Kong style shit. It's pretty funny, but it can be avoided, otherwise you're about to soak up damage like a ShamWow. Essentially, this kind of seemed like PlayStation's answer to Die Hard Arcade and Dynamite Cop, just minus the QTE sections. Both games are equally as ridiculous, but that's part of the charm. And it's an arcade-style brawler that really doesn't give a fuck about making sense from start to finish, and that's absolutely what it did best. For beat-em-up fans, especially ones who enjoy that mid-era 3D variety, give this one a look, man. It's pretty tight. It's got some interesting things in store for you, and also it's one of those games that requires multiple plays to get to the true ending, so don't forget to turn the autosave feature on in the options menu. Gekido Urban Fighters gets an 8 out of 10, and for a game as fun as this is, I'm surprised I didn't hear more about this back in the day when it came out, because I know Interplay usually pushed all their games pretty steadily, but I'm curious how I didn't hear about this one. But hey, better late than never. And this is a fun one to waste an hour or two on, and it's also 2-player local co-op, so if you got 2 controllers and a friend, you got twice as much fun. If you're looking for an over-the-top beat-em-up for the PS1, here you go, man, you found it. And I want to thank you guys again for checking out this video. If these are helpful and you can use it as a resource, that's awesome. Check back often. We'll have some more reviews and commentaries coming up in the future. So stay safe out there and take it easy.